Hey there folks, Rel here. Today we're going to be looking at some character animations to show off some interesting quirks, as well as dispel some benefits that we think we get from doing certain actions in game. Now some of this testing was done on the live server, and even more of it was done on test, so while some of the points here may be subject to change, most of the stuff already exists on the live server, and it has for a good long while. And before we begin, I do want to sincerely thank GamePro03, who is a director of the Ascended outfit, which is not only an outfit, but it's also a whole gaming community. And all of their information is in the description below, so I definitely suggest checking it out if you're curious or if you need somebody to play with. So we're going to start with something that I think everyone should already know. PlanetSide 2 runs on client-side hit detection, meaning that if you shoot the enemy on your screen, the enemy is going to take damage regardless of what they are doing on their screen. So if I see myself behind cover, or if I see myself crouching, if the enemy does not see me doing that, if the enemy sees my body still, then to them, I'm not crouching, I'm not behind cover. And if you haven't already, it might be a good idea to check out the time to kill versus lag compensation video that was posted a while back. It's really important to understand, and it relates to what we're going to talk about here. So moving past that, we'll get into something that I thought was really interesting. If you are crouched and stationary while holding C4 detonators, a medical kit, or a restoration kit, if you get hit while holding any of those, your character is going to stand up instantly. Even if you're crouched under something that wouldn't normally let you stand up, like if you're crouched under the lip of a railing or something like that. And it's not going to happen on your screen. You'll still see yourself as crouched, but the enemy will see you pop tall, meaning that they can fill you full of holes in that half a second that the animation is actually playing. However, if you have one of these things in your hand and you're moving, this doesn't happen. I'm sure this is just a bug, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. I can see it leading to a lot of frustration for light assaults sitting behind cover trying to bait a max into walking over their pile of C4. So what to take from this is that if you're using C4 or a health kit, don't stay still while crouched, or don't have it in your hand to begin with. Another discrepancy is when trying to crouch while jump jetting. So on your screen you crouch down, but the enemy does not see that. They see you just doing your standard jump jet animation. And I've been a victim of this myself, because when I'm using drifter jump jets, I like to stay crouched, and I've been trying to sneak behind low walls or low hills and whatever else, but I'd still be getting shot, and I'm thinking to myself, how can these people even see me? And the reason for this is that your character model does not actually crouch while you are crouched, or while you're jump jetting in any capacity. As a side note, however, crouching does still have some benefits for jump jetting, as you will actually be able to fit under overhangs that you normally would not be able to, like trying to jump jet through a window. Sliding while using drifters is also easier to do because you're less likely to get caught up on those invisible hitches that make you feel like you're trying to drift through mud. An older but still very relevant issue is that when you're trying to look over a ledge, either while crouched or while standing, the enemy is going to see you if they look up before you're going to actually be able to see them. And this is because your camera isn't placed in your head. It's closer to your point of origin. It's basically in your chest, and it's clearly demonstrated in the footage here. As you can see, GamePro can't actually see me, but I can see him clear as day. So just remember that your character's head sticks out a little bit further than your camera, so if you're leaning over the edge, to see targets below, or if you're crouched behind cover, your head may be sticking out a little bit further than you'd like it to.
Who's gonna clean up the body now, huh? You're not gonna do it.
Your hands stick out further than your camera as well. And this makes sense given that your arms need to be sticking out in order to hold a gun. The downside is that it makes you a target. So if you're crouched behind a turret and you're facing it directly, the enemy is going to have a harder time hitting you than if you were facing sideways. As you can see from the footage here, your hands are a little bit exposed when they're perpendicular to the turret's facing. An example that's probably a little bit more clear is that when you are crouched behind thin partitions, like those in a watchtower, your hands can sometimes be visible through the partition, and they will absolutely be more visible while you're aiming down sights, regardless of what weapon you're using. Also, the big barrel sticking out of the steel partition probably isn't the best way to stay hidden in the first place. So the takeaway from that is basically, if you are in cover or around a corner, know that your hands and your head are going to stick out a little bit further than you'd like it to. Another thing to note about crouching is that you have a lower profile while stationary than you do while moving. And this makes sense, but it's the difference between exposing your back to the enemy, exposing a target area, and being completely concealed. Slowly along, like you can start at the partition, just back one actually. On top of that, your head position also makes a difference. When crouching and stationary, looking at the ground is going to almost completely conceal yourself from enemy fire. Looking in the air, however, is going to make your head a nice little target. Looking at the ground is obviously not the smartest thing to do while you're trying to shoot at someone, but if you're reloading behind cover, or if you're trying to use a medkit or dropping mines or whatever, enemies are going to have a very, very difficult time hitting you. You bob up just a little bit during the walking. Along the same lines, head positioning makes a huge difference while moving as well. As you can see from the footage here, the difference is pretty prominent. Your head basically flattens out with the top of your torso, which means that if you are running away from someone with your back turned to them, you can completely avoid getting headshotted if you're looking at the ground. And that's a pretty big deal if you're trying to get away from a skilled sniper. Likewise, if you are looking up, your head is more exposed. Not a huge difference like it is while crouching, but it is there. The next couple of things I want to talk about are more, I guess, advanced styles of movement that a lot of players, including myself, tend to use in combat. The first one, and probably the biggest one, is crouch strafing. And I do this in my videos on occasion, and many other people swear by this technique. The intention is to 80-80 strafe while also throwing in a crouch every so often, and the result is that you get to keep a lot of your normal standing strafing speed instead of being slowed down too much by a crouch. At the same time, you cut your profile down a considerable amount. Not consistently, but sporadically. This is useful because it makes you more difficult to hit, but it can also be a double-edged sword as your head dips down to about chest height. And if your hands aren't blocking your face, you're probably going to get shot in it. But all in all, it is a strong technique with some tangible benefits. The other technique that's used a lot is jumping and crouching. Crouching after jumping will drop your character more quickly to the ground, however, it will not lower your profile in midair, just like jump shots, I guess. You're still going to be using your normal jumping animation until you hit the ground. Not only that, but after you hit the ground there is a slight delay where your character is just going to stand there, they're going to be using their standing animation, and then they're going to crouch, provided you have the crouch button held down for longer than that little standing animation takes place. And I've slowed down the footage so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, if you let go of the crouch button after hitting the ground before your character goes into a full-on crouch, they're just simply not going to go into the crouch animation at all. And this is sort of what it looks like.
It's not really useful.
The caveat to this is that if you're firing a weapon while using this technique, you will not do the normal standing animation once you hit the ground. Instead, you're going to be crouching and firing your weapon as soon as you hit. So this causes a slight schism in the animations, and right here you can see two different freeze frames from when I'm firing my weapon. The first is while I'm still in the air, and the second is while I'm on the ground, firing in a moving crouch position. I believe this was recorded at 30 frames per second, so it should be pretty accurate. It's a nice warp from air to ground. And this is a distinct advantage, obviously, but again, only if you're firing a weapon from a crouch position. I do want to warn you, though, that I didn't get to test this part out a whole lot. As a matter of fact, this is the only footage that I actually have of me firing a weapon while using this technique. And if you're not firing a weapon while doing it, it's largely ineffective. So if you have something that shows different results than this, then do let me know and I'll annotate the video with an update. Well, I guess it's not a huge difference. But the last thing that I want to mention is that, like we said at the start of this, the testing was done for the most part on the public test server. So whether all of this is going to stay the same in the game on live, whether it's in its current state or not, we won't know. But most, if not all, of what I showed you here is already on live servers, for the exception of the general glitchiness of the animations, which seems to be very prevalent on test right now. And it probably has something to do with culling of animations or maybe level of detail. I really can't know for sure. There isn't really a single thing that I can harp on in particular, but a lot of the animations are simply out of whack on test server right now. Particularly when you're trying to run up hills, you'll do like a frog bouncing like animation that makes it difficult to get a proper headshot. And even when people are like 10 meters from you, there's going to be some frames that aren't getting animated at all. So it seems like you're jumping frames for no real reason. And even leaning and turning, you know, the feature that they intended to implement really isn't all there. And I don't really think it makes a huge difference either way. A lot of things are just kind of out of whack. But that's about it. At least that's all that I could think of as far as testing animations go. And again, I'd like to thank GamePro for working on this with me. And I know this was a relatively short video, but if it was interesting, helpful, or if you just like watching GamePro get shot in the face, please feel free to like, subscribe, favorite, tell your friends about the channel. And if you have any animation related questions or interesting things that you've picked up on while playing the game, just leave a comment below so we can talk about them. Thanks very much, folks. We're all signing off.
Oh, God. Wait, what
Or
is...
you can just respawn, I guess that's quick.
Right, yeah, I'll just respond.
What else? Okay, and then I'm gonna do it again, but this time we're gonna be running.